Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be here this afternoon to try and spread the word about Harford Transit. There may be some of you who have heard some of what I'm going to say, some of you who may not have any knowledge of what I'm going to say. But what I wanted to do is just do a short overview of who we are and what we do and how we get it done. And some of the challenges that we face and some of the opportunities that we see in the future that will help Harford Transit become the suburban transit organization that it is transitioning into now. Well, we were operational a little bit ago. So, Char, I'm going to need you to There we go. Harford Transit runs 8 public bus routes. That's going from stop to stop on a time set schedule. We also we operate Monday through Fridays from about 5 till about 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. We also run our demand response service. Demand response is a service that we offer to the disabled community and to seniors over 60. This is a program where we will go from anywhere in Harford County to pick someone up at their home, their office, their school, their doctors, and take them to anywhere else in Harford County. This is at $2 a ride. In FY17, during that fiscal year, we provided over 330,000 trips during that year, and we drove almost 900,000 miles. We have a fleet of 43 buses, 56 full and part-time employees. We service over 90% of the major employment centers within Harford County. This past year, we were named the #1 transit system in the state by the Maryland Transportation Association. Where do we get our funding, and how are we able to provide the services that we do? Our funding comes from 3 primary locations, and that is from the federal government, from the state government, and from the county government. Our operational costs are covered primarily by a grant from the federal government, in which they contribute about 50% of our operating costs. The state government, under the current formula, should be contributing 25%, and the local government should be contributing the other 25%. However, due to shortfalls in state funding over the past number of years, the state's contribution has continually to decline, and our county's contribution has continually grown. So now, instead of being a 25% operating statistic, the county, it is more like about 35% for the county, with the state picking up the remaining portion. Our funds for capital come, again, from the same sources, but the federal government covers 80% of our capital costs, while the county covers 10% and the state covers 10%. This is to pay for things like buses, bus shelters, equipment, and things of that nature. We are lucky in Harford County. Harford County and Cecil County are 2 of the only counties in the state that have their own dedicated funding source from the federal government. We actually have a line item in the Federal Register where Harford County has its own what's called UZA, where money based on population is populated based on the federal surface transportation funding. As I said, state funding has remained static over the past number of years, and our demand response service is actually not paid, it's paid $0 by the federal government. It's all either state or local. And again, on the state side, the act that was created to provide this senior transportation was an act called SSTEPS, Special Statewide Transportation Assistance Program. Well, there was a certain amount of funding that was placed into that fund when it was originally, the law was originally written 15, 20 years ago. However, that amount has been static over time. When you couple a static funding but with enormously rising cost as we see baby boomers entering the market. We see an enormous growth in the dialysis patients group, where we are constantly having to take more and more people to dialysis and to medical related issues. And that's a growth in what's called NEMT, non-emergency medical transportation. I won't get too much into that because one of our state representatives will be talking in length about what's called non-emergency medical transportation, or in state parlance, MA transportation. We service with our route buses both the Upper Chesapeake campus across the street, the Harford Grace campus that is served by our Route 1 and Route 7. We see an increasing demand for our demand response service as we see baby boomers and that population who have become more and more transit dependent rely on our door-to-door or curb-to-curb type service. The growth in dialysis transportation continues to stagger not only us here in Harford County, but nationwide. This is a nationwide problem that is being addressed on all levels of federal and state governments across this country. We have been looking at how do we improve our rider communications. We have recently installed our new transit computerized management system. This allows us to track all of our buses in real time around the county. It allows us to get automatic passenger counts on our route buses. We know how many people get on a bus at a given stop during a given point of day. And this will help us design better routes and better loadings throughout the day to become more efficient and improve our on-time performance. These are just some of the things that we have taken on in the past 3 years in order to embellish and improve our services for the riding public in Harford County. We've changed our signage. You'll notice around town now big yellow and blue signs that designate a fixed route bus stop. Attached to it are stickers that also explain what buses will stop at each stop and where that bus goes to, from Harford to Grace to Bel Air, or from Bel Air to Edgewood, etc. We have incorporated one of the apps that our provider has into our system, and it's called Route Shout. Route Shout 2.0 can be downloaded on any smart device, and through this app, anyone can get real-time information on where the route buses are. They can pick what stop they're stopped at, and it will tell them how many minutes before the next bus arrives, and they can, in fact, go to another tab and look on a map and see where the bus is in real time and watch it move towards their stop. We have incorporated Google Map transit travel planning. So we upload all of our schedules and all of our real-time information into Google Maps. And anyone with a smart device and a computer can go on to Google Maps, pick travel planning, and type in where they are and where they want to go to, and they will be given step-by-step directions on how to get there. Go outside the door, turn left, walk 2 blocks to bus station Y, catch bus Y, and go to X stop, get off, go get on the airplane, go get on another bus, what have you, and it'll take you all the way to your final destination. We've installed stop and voice enunciation systems in all of our fixed route buses. So as one of our riders approaches a stop, it will say, "Now arriving Harford Mall." As soon as we stop and get ready to go, it will say, "Next stop, State Office Building," and so on throughout the system. It also has, for the visually impaired, a scrolling sign that also distributes the same information. We have put automatic passenger counters, as I just mentioned. We have just completed, in fact, hope to turn it on within a week or so, a new advanced video security systems on all of our buses. This will allow for the protection of our riders, the protection of our drivers, and also to protect the county in the cases of liabilities that may come up, and so we'll have real-time video information on what actually occurred. We are in the process, I'm working with a regional group of the Baltimore metropolitan region in which we are trying to get an automatic app payment system that could be downloaded onto anyone's smart device, loaded with a credit card, and you can go to any stop and get on any bus and be able to use this as a payment for your ticket. This will allow organizations to load on to some of their clients' phones. It will allow for seniors who may be on a fixed income to be able to monitor exactly how much they have to have, and it will eliminate a lot of people having to carry cash with them. We are in the middle of our bus shelter program. We've already installed our first 3 bus shelters that are owned by Harford Transit. While there are a few other bus shelters throughout the county, they are not Harford Transit's and never have been. They're either owned by a local jurisdiction or by the Maryland Transportation Administration and their commuter bus service. We are working on a real-time transfer printing system where in the bus, instead of our people having to print transfers out every day for every day of the week throughout the year, we'll be able to print in real time and get this information out into the hands of the public at a much lower cost. And we are in the process of, again, working in a regional standpoint of obtaining a new planning tool which will allow us a computerized platform that will allow us to plan routes based on traffic patterns, on time of day, on demographics, and it will be an invaluable tool so we can make adjustments in routes as the demographics or times change. This is just a graphic representation of what we are doing. As you notice, they have onboard ads and bus diagnostics and Wi-Fi. These are in our phase 2 plan that we are planning to put monitors on our buses that will be able to display news and ads, programmed ads for if you're on the bus and the next stop there's a McDonald's, quarter of a mile away, the McDonald's will come up and say, stop and get a cup of coffee for us from us today.
Sorry, I went ahead.
No, that's it, that's good. And so what are our challenges? Our challenges are getting greater and greater each year that goes by. Mounting federal regulation is really starting to take its toll on small and medium transit organizations around the country. It's difficult at a federal level for them to think of anything but one size fits all. So when there's a train wreck out in California, all of a sudden, all of public transportation is bad and you need a massive safety program. However, one interesting statistic is that public bus transportation is the safest mode of transportation in the country. It beats out cars, planes, boats, and any other mode of transportation that's out there. So we're working with the federal government to try and get them to take a look at what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. The supply of qualified CDL drivers. We required drivers with commercial driver's license to drive our buses. However, the demand nationwide for people with commercial driver's license is at an all-time high. In fact, it is the #1 concern of the trucking industry going into 2018, is the supply of qualified drivers. So we are constantly competing at a county level with a county wage against these national trucking companies who pay people $30, $35 an hour. So it continues to be a challenge and an impediment to us to be able to grow and add more routes and more buses. So this is a challenge we're working to overcome right now. Procurement issues that kind of dovetails in with the mounting regulation. We have capital money to spend, and that's unusual for people to hear that. I've got some capital money I can spend, but they make it so difficult to spend it that it takes a couple of years just to go through the paperwork to buy a bus. So we have to balance these challenges and work with the resources that we have. Static state funding, we constantly work with Secretary Rahm at the Maryland Department of Transportation and with the legislature on trying to increase funding to what we call LOTS, locally operated transit systems. Similar to Harford County and Cecil County and Frederick County and Washington County, they all have their small transit systems that we are fighting for that ever elusive dollar. Our aging population, when you look at the charts, the baby boomer, we're going to start seeing an exponential growth in the number of people who are going to be required and need our type of service. And then legislative stability. Without a long-term federal surface transportation bill that looks out 10 years, it makes it impossible for organizations like us to do effective capital asset planning and to know when we can get rid of a bus and knowing that the money's going to be there to replace it during this carefully thought out period. Over the past 10 years, it's been a little difficult in trying to balance those needs. And our goals, we want to continue on our increased technology. We want to definitely improve our on-time performance utilizing some of the tools that we put in. We want later service at night. We want to try and institute weekend service. Again, this is all very expensive to do. To put on one bus costs about $125,000. So as you can imagine, we have to be very efficient with the utilization of our resources right now. We want to continue to increase our bus shelter placements around the county. Our next one that we hope to be putting in is in Bel Air at the state office building. We've been working with Kevin Smalls in the planning department in Bel Air. It's been a long process with them too. Again, nothing's easy. Mobile ticketing application, we're working on that. Real-time transfer printing, our Remix software to go and look at how we can best, most efficiently do routes in the area, and onboard news and ads. Chuck? And that's it. So this is the time that if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question, I don't know, some of the funding that you talked about that you're available is very hard to spend. And the fact that CDL drivers, you're really running into an issue with getting qualified CDL drivers. Has there ever been a thought, I know that CDL training is really very expensive.
Yes, it is.
That the Transit Association might pay for the CDL training and then sign a contract with them that they would be, yours for 3 years or however that would work?
We have investigated numerous opportunities in that realm. With every opportunity, there's also a challenge associated with that, from liability issues to all sorts of issues that rise in that area. We are currently trying to work with Harford Community College. Right now, Harford and Cecil County, they do have a joint CDL drivers program, but it is held at Cecil Community College. And primarily, their focus is to train people to drive big tractor trailer trucks. We are working with Harford Community College to look at the feasibility, because of the demand is so great nationwide, is possibly doing our own here, and have a tenure that may be transit specific that can work for school bus drivers and for our immediate group. Yes, sir.
You mentioned something about the airport. Do you have transportation to the airport?
To BWI?
Yes.
No. The way you can get, the most efficient way you can get to BWI from Harford County is by the MARC train, which lets you off right at the airport.
Okay, you certainly mentioned it. That's why.
Yeah, it's something that is one of our goals, is that we're working again to make a regional kind of linked system so that right now you can just about go from New York, well, actually from Boston all the way to Newark, Delaware on public transportation.
Wow.
And then, but there's that little 20-mile gap between Newark, Delaware and Perryville, Maryland that we're trying to figure out how to fill. And then once that's done, then we have another gap between Harford County, and Baltimore. So we're working with the MTA, looking at feasible connections that may work, possibly having one of our buses go to White Marsh in order to link up with their buses. Again, it's a matter of resources, the amount of time it takes to do that, how many people are we actually going to be able to serve with that resource, and are those resources better served somewhere else? So it's a delicate balance that we want to serve the most people and have the greatest good with the resources that we have. Yes, ma'am.
How far in advance do you have to call for the demand response service?
Well, the typical answer is far in advance as you can. Now, the reason why I say that, I don't mean to be flippant, is that our demand response service is capacity constrained, and it's based on first come, first serve. We have some clients who go to work, disabled students, people who work at the proving grounds or other industries around Harford County that we take every day. Every day we pick them up and get them to work on time. And we feel that's a very worthy endeavor. However, as these baby boomers start going up and as the demand for our services start going up, especially on that demand response side where we don't get any federal money, at some point we're going to be hitting capacity. And at some point the answer is going to be, sorry, we can't do it today. So we're going to keep trying to expand our service, keep getting more efficient, and pick up as many people with the few buses that we have until it reaches a point that either we get more money and put more buses in, or we have to figure a better way.
Well, we're in northern Harford County, and we don't have any buses.
Well, you do, and we do service Northern Harford. We go up to Whiteford all the time, Dublin, Darlington, with our demand response buses to pick up clients, and we also take them to the Highland Senior Center in Street. So,
One day a week or something.
right. Well, we were doing it 5, but again, resources and a reorganization up there. Well, we're working with every group that we can in regards to that. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. One is, what is travel training exactly?
What is travel training? Well, travel training it's primarily geared for the disabled community, and where we will send a trainer to a location, a group of people, and we will teach them how to read a bus schedule, how you get on and pay if they're in a wheelchair, what they can expect, how they're going to use the lift, what can they expect while they're on the bus, how do they ask questions of the bus driver, what is a stop, and we go through basic terminology and basic process of how to use a bus, and most specifically the schedule. But we can tailor it to any need that any organization or group might have.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, I do applications for the paratransit pretty often. Who processes those, and do they contact the individual and say, your application has been accepted, or how is the outcome?
So how are our applications processed for the demand response service? The individual will send in their documentation, especially on the disabled side, because we're required by the state to have that by the FTA to certify if we are using it ADA funds. So they will process it. It comes into our office either via fax or mail. And it goes right to, we have a person who does nothing but process those applications during the day. And typically when we get one in the morning, it's processed by the afternoon. If they're not accepted, for whatever reason, missing paperwork or they don't meet the criteria, a letter is sent out to them to explain why they're missing it and then maybe what they have to do to correct the deficit.
Do you have that person's contact information or their name?
Her name is Pam Hevner, Heavner. I don't have her extension right off the top of my head. But if you go on the county, I'll be right. If you go on the county website and just look up Pam, she's there. Or if you just call Harford Transit, hit 1, it will take you back to dispatch and Pam sits in dispatch. Okay? Yes, sir.
Do you have transportation from Darlington to here?
Not directly. The only transportation that Harford Transit provides between Darlington and Bel Air or the rest of the county is through our demand response service. We would like to go up to Darlington, we'd like to go up to Norrisville, we'd like to go up to Whiteford, but again, what we have to do is look at resources, time, and the number of people that are going to be served. And typically, we've found that in rural areas, most people who live in those rural areas already have a network of transportation set up, knowing, because as they moved to those areas, they knew, and so on. But for those that are transit dependent and don't have that safety net, we do provide the demand response service.
Thank you.
Yes. You and then you. Yes, ma'am.
With the demand response, what kind of assistance can the bus drivers offer the disabled people? Like to get onto the bus? Or is that possible?
We're bound, this is a very, very, very tricky subject for us. Because all of our bus drivers, all of us who work in transportation, would love to go up and help every single way we can. However, liability issues in today's litigious society has precluded us from being able to do everything we want to do. So what can they expect? Typically, we are a curb-to-curb service. So, I mean, if they're right there at the thing and they're in a wheelchair, our driver's going to go and push them over and then help them get, onto the ramp, and we'll raise them up and get them strapped into the bus from there. We will not go in anyone's house, simply because, again, those issues in today's world, unless you have 2 or 3 people with you, it becomes very problematic. Yes, ma'am.
For the demand response service, if you have a senior who needs to get registered with them, can they register over the phone, or does everyone have to complete an application?
Okay, well, does everyone have to complete an application, or can they register over a phone? If they are a senior, right, if they're a senior, they don't really have to do anything. They just have to be able to show their Medicare card or their ID when they get on the bus. We want to get them registered in the system because we want to know, are they in a wheelchair? Do they have a walker? Do they use a rollator? Do they have any other disabilities that may preclude, them using steps? Just so that we are prepared when we get to their location. We know what to expect and we're ready to meet their needs.
Okay.
Okay? So we would like them to fill out a form on, if you go to our website and go to forms, the form's right there. And for seniors, you don't have to fill out that 10-page application. It's just like the front page or something.
Just the front page for
Yeah,
seniors.
yeah.
Got it.
That shows their name, address, again, if they have issues in
Okay.
any regard.
Perfect, thank you.
Certainly. Anyone else? Yes,
One more
ma'am.
question, please.
I have one, this will be quick. This is applicable, we're all talking about demand response. This is applicable for people with mental health disability as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Now, again, to a certain degree, it has to be a disability that is manageable, that it does not cause violent behavior, things of that nature, that where they really need someone with them, a caregiver or whatever. But typically, we take a good share of people from the ARC, from Chimes, and so on, to work primarily. Yes, ma'am.
What do you all define as seniors?
A senior, what do we define as a senior? A senior is anyone 60 years or older.
All right, last question, please.
Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
If somebody does have behavioral health issues and requires someone with them, can that person that needs to go with them also ride?
Yes, ma'am. They need to be registered. And that's what we call a registered caregiver. So if they're disabled, regardless of whether it's a mental or physical disability, they need to fill out and be registered because we need to have, the doctors and all that type of thing. But at the same time, they can register a caregiver. And the caregiver actually rides free.
Okay.
So they can assist the individual and ride, but they do have to be a registered caregiver. If they're not, if they're just a companion, they would have to pay the $2 fare each way. Okay, well, I believe that's all the time. Thank you all so very much. If you have any questions, in your packet, there are schedules, there's information about route shout and so on, and there's also our website and our telephone number. So feel free, contact us in any way. One last question.
People that have an oxygen tank,
They are allowed to get on board with an oxygen tank, but we must be able to secure it.
okay.
Okay? Thank you all.